have you ever felt like this kind of tired, like this guy at the end of the year? There is truly no tired like end of the year teacher tired. I I feel that. So I may not look quite like that guy, but I'm pretty close, I feel. All of the material that we talk about is right there in the hotspot. So it's got a friendly URL, pist.edu/EOY. So if you hit Control T on your computer, if you're on your desktop or laptop, hit Control T, and then it'll open up a new tab and you can type in pist.edu/EOY, and that's going to bring you to our end of year. So we have some bonus Seesaw, Go Guardian end of year tips and tricks. So you may want to take a look at that. But everything that we're talking about is housed here in this website. Okay. So what are we going to do today? We're really going to kind of figure out how to close out the year and get ready for next year. And so we've got 6 tips about Google Classroom and 3 tips for Google Drive. And then we'll have like a Q&A. Does that seem okay with everybody? Yeah? Okay, good. If I kind of look like I'm looking off to the side, I'm not giving you the side eye. I just have 2 screens and I'm trying to make sure I get both covered. Okay, so sorry in advance. All right, so think about one word or emoji that would best describe your Google Classroom or Drive right now. So if I were going to put it in the chat, I might put in hot mess because that's how I feel like my Google Drive is right now. That's actually 2 words, but don't judge me. You can also hit Windows and period on in the chat. And if you hit Windows period at the same time, your little emojis pop up. So you can give me emojis like to describe your Google Drive as well. So we're going to cover these 6 tips, but I wanted to point your attention to this little guy right here. So earlier we made like a 5-minute, like quick, rapid fire, these 6 tips. So if you need just something, what did she say about Google Classroom? You can watch this 5-minute video rather than try to sift through our hour-long presentation recording. So that's there to help you, and I have it for the Google Drive as well. So just a quick tip. I love these memes. They are student created. So we're going to see these memes kind of pop throughout. But now that we're in face-to-face classroom, this happens a lot. Like if you wanted a grade, then you should have put your name on it. I want the music to show up right here on the slide. So that's our first tip. Thankfully, with Google Classroom, we don't have to worry about their name being on it because it's automatic. That's one of the perks. But you want to, at the end of the year, make sure that all your student work is returned to the student in your Google Classroom. And the reason that you want to do that is because if it isn't, then you are the owner. And if you happen to delete that work, then it's gone forever. And it's really the student's decision to either delete that or keep it. So let's return all the files to the student. And then when you're in the shared with me and you end up deleting files, that you don't accidentally delete someone else's work. So there's 2 ways to do this. To return student work is 1, go into your classes. So I'm going to grab a new tab and I can either type in classroom.google, or I can click on my little waffle over here and click classroom, or I can go through my web desk and hit classroom. So this is your classroom, what we call the dashboard. And I have it kind of zoomed in. But if you zoom out, if you notice, I have a number of classrooms, and that's not all of it. I haven't scrolled all the way down. So don't judge me, but I'm in the process of cleaning this up. What you want to do is actually go into a classroom, and I'm going to use my Teacher Tech Fundamentals class. And if I go into grades, I have just a bird's eye view of what assignments I've given and where the students are in that assignment. So it looks like I'm good on task 9 and 11, but on task 5, I have several students who have turned it in, but I have not returned it to the students. So I am still the owner of these documents right here. And so I can individually view it and return it. But what's nice is right here at the top, if I hover over at the top of the assignment, I can click on the 3 dots and click return all. When I return all, the students, the work is all reverted back to the ownership of the student. And I can quickly go through, if I only have 1 or 2 classrooms that I need to do this, it's easy for me to go into grades and then just one assignment at a time return if I've already reviewed and I just didn't happen to do that. So make sure that you, even if you didn't grade it necessarily, but you viewed it, you want to return it so that that reflection or assignment or assessment is back into the ownership of the student. So that's how you would do it. Just click on the 3 dots, click return. Alternatively, you can go to the grades you can go to classes in your classes dashboard and click review. So I'm going to go back to my classes. So here's the dashboard. Okay. And then at the top left, there's some things, some little links. So I can view my calendar. I have a to-do list. Those are to do for classes that I'm enrolled in. But as a teacher, I have this to review button. And when I click it, I have all the assignments that I have not reviewed. Okay. And it's going to show all my classes, but I might want to go through like per class and so I can make sure that I've covered all of that, each class. So if I click on all classes, the drop down, and let's say, for example, my Seesaw, nope, I don't have anything in there. Okay, I'll go back to Teacher Tech Fundamentals. So I have 3 assignments. Sometimes there's a 0 here. If there's a 0 here, I don't need to do anything, but I know I can filter 3 assignments that have work turned in, okay, but I have not returned it to the student. So I'm going to hold down my control key and click the task, okay, the assignment. And when I do that, it doesn't open in the same window. It opens in a separate, doesn't open in the same tab. It opens in a separate tab. So I still have my home base tab. And then here, I can very easily look and review, or I can, if I already know, all these can go back to the kid. I can click the All Student button and then click Return. So click this All Students, hit Return, and it will return all the work. So there's 2 ways to do it. You can go into the classroom, or you can click by assignment, depending on how detailed you want to be. I want to mention this pro tip. So if you have grades or you have to keep track for documentation purposes, your Google Classroom data, you can export it into a spreadsheet and save it that way. And then you want to do that before you archive the class at the end of the year after the kids leave. So that's tip number 1. Here's another meme from a student. That is so 7 years ago. I think this is really funny for social studies, a social studies class. I would love that. So tip number 2 is set student access. This means that at the end of the class, you may still have kids enrolled in that class, even though you're not posting anything in it. Those students are still able to access any assignment in that class, any documents or files, any assessments. And so you want to consider for class for your classroom integrity, whether or not you need your students to access those. If you have a multi grade class, you're going to see them next year for part 2 or whatever, you can archive the class without unenrolling your students, and then they will have a view-only access to that class. They won't be able to alter any assignments or submit again or anything. But we recommend unenrolling just because if you that avoids the idea of students sharing the assignments ahead of time to other students next year. So the way that you do that is to go into your class. So let's say this is my teacher tech fundamentals. I'm going to go into people. And this is helpful too for your teachers. You may have 5 or 6 or 10 teachers that you have added as co-teachers to your class. You can remove them, and you can click the students, click all students, and then select all students, and then in the actions, you'll hit remove, and that will remove all your students. Don't worry, they still have all of their assignments in their Google folder. They just won't be able to see the actual directions and assignment and documents and files from the classroom. So that will unenroll them. And then then you'll be able to archive the class. If you want them to have access still, then you don't have to unenroll. And that brings us to our next tip. This one is not a student one, but it still touches my heart because it's a math meme, and it's the wife of pi. I find that to be quite hilarious. Tip number 3 is archive class. So you want to go ahead and archive your class so that your classroom does not look like the scrolling of endless classes like mine does. So I'm still in the process of organizing. So don't do as what I see, just do as I say. But I want to, once I've returned all the work and unenrolled my students, then I can take that class and archive it. And so the way I archive it, these are classes that I'm the owner of. So I'm going to click on the 3 dots, and let's see, here's my Seesaw test class. I'm going to click 3 dots and click archive. Okay, that removes it. Yes, I'm sure. Okay, that removes it from my home base, but it doesn't delete it. So if I want it again, I'm just going to go over here to my menu and go all the way down to archive classes. And there's where my Seesaw test class is. If I'm like, oh, I still need that, or I still want it, or a student still needs to access it, I can click the 3 dots and restore. So it's not gone forever. It's archived, so it's out of view for you, and it's also out of view for your students. So it'll disappear from your students' dashboard and your co-teacher's dashboard. So it helps a lot of people streamline their Google Classroom. Okay, so archiving classes helps. Then the other pro tip is not only once you archive it, then your kids don't have access to it. So if, for example, here's my teacher tech fundamentals, if your students had, for any reason, bookmarked this class, then you want them to right click and delete that bookmark because they won't have access anymore. And it'll just be nice then when they bookmark their new class, it'll be fresh and they won't get confused. If they've bookmarked the home page, that's a different story because they'll want to access their multiple classes from the home page. Okay, questions so far? I'm just kind of rolling and blowing, but the first 3 tips we got okay. Those are great for just handling your Google, the initial steps for your Google Classroom. All right, we're going to skip this real quick. And oh, have you ever had a student that just turned in their late work? Yes, this happens. Is to remove your calendar. So if you are in your Google Classroom class, you can find your calendar right here next to your review, right up here, or inside that class. So here's my Teacher Tech Fundamentals. There's a Classwork tab, and you can find your Google Drive folder here. Okay, so this is the folder that's associated with this class. So if I click on this, sorry, did I say folder? I meant calendar. This is the calendar that's associated with this class. It opens up the general calendar that has all of your Google Classroom class calendars combined. So here I have a number of calendars, and maybe I want to streamline it. I really don't want to see all of this because truly I only use one or two or three of these. So here's my new teacher session and calendar, and we never even posted anything. So I can either A, hide it from the list, or if I go into settings and sharing, I can go all the way down and click delete. And then I won't see that calendar. And since I didn't use that calendar at all, then I'm fine with deleting it. Okay. But if you still feel some attachment to that calendar, you can right click and you can click on the three dots and just hide it from the list. And then it just disappears from your view right here, and it won't clutter it up. So you want to take care of the calendars that are associated with your Google Classroom. Questions on that so far? Okay. And this is for our Star Trek fans. But it's so true. It's so deflating when there's nothing in the classroom assignment. Okay, so teaching the same class next year, if you are and you want to reuse your assignments, there's a few options to create a new class. So option one, you can duplicate the class, and I'll show you how. Option two is to create a template for that class, and then you can reuse the template each time. So it's like the master copy rather than copying every year the previous class. And then the last one is to just delete all the students and teachers and make the assignments draft form and reuse that same Google class. There's no penalty for making new classes. So really the reusing class option is not recommended because you could get into some tricky situations with that, previous students and new students and things like that. So let's talk about duplicating a class. So if I'm in my classes dashboard or homepage, to copy a class, so I've already gotten a copy of this class, I can just click on the three dots and click copy. It's right above archive. So super easy. If your classroom has a lot of material or assignments, it could take a little while to generate the new class. Don't worry. But please know that when you copy a class, all your videos will be copied again. All of your slide decks, your documents, that it'll create a copy of everything inside that classroom. So with our our Google Drives having limited space starting in June, you want to be mindful of that. So I would just judiciously copy a class, thinking really hard about that. The preference or the preferred method is to make a template. It takes a little bit of a step at the beginning, but once you've created the template, you can edit the template and then make a copy of the template, and it does not make copies of all of the different files within it. It will reuse the same one. So let me show you how that works. So here I am in the homepage classes. I'm going to create a class right here, plus sign, create a class. And this is, I'm going to do the apple. I want an apple, green apple. This is Mrs. J's second grade. Okay, so this is the second grade class. It's a new classroom. All of this will can be filled out and then will transfer when you copy the master. But now it's creating the class. And then I'm going to go into Classwork, click Create, and reuse post. And I can reuse any post from my original second grade classroom. So I might start with module 1. And then down here, this is the critical piece, is that you want to make sure that this is unchecked. We do not want to create new copies of all the attachments. So you just want to use the same attachments, not create new copies. And so I'm going to uncheck that, and then I can click reuse. It will be in draft form. So I'm going to click this and say save draft, and then go on to the next one. So it takes a hot minute to populate all of your assignments into your template class. But once you do that, you can use this template class over and over again, and it won't clutter your Google Drive with extraneous copies of videos and files and slide decks. And in fact, I'm going to go right here and make this template. And that's how I know this is the class that I'm going to copy over and over again. Okay. So that's the preferred way, is making a template. Manually add assignments, and then you can use that template over and over again. Okay. Have you ever had students say, "You didn't tell me that, Miss Dinsby"? But what if I really did tell you that and you didn't listen? All right. Tip 6, leaving the district. If you are leaving the district, or maybe you're changing jobs or campuses, and you have an intact Google Classroom that maybe multiple people on your team are using, you want to transfer ownership of that class. And that way, it helps the students that are still in that class and the co-teachers, as well as being able to maintain the functionality of that class. So particularly if you're leaving in the middle of the year, it's a really handy thing to make sure your colleagues. So even if you're not leaving, but a colleague of yours, a co-team mate of yours is leaving, hey, do you mind transferring ownership of that Google Classroom to me? And that way I'm able to access and reuse posts from that next year. That's really handy. So the way you transfer ownership is in that People tab. So remember when we were deleting, oops, I don't have anybody in this class. It's Teacher Tech Fundamentals list. That's the one I had. Okay. So if I go into the People tab, I am the owner, but I see that Leah is a co-teacher. I can click on the 3 dots by her name and simply click Make Class Owner. Then she becomes the owner, and I can leave without compromising the classroom. So that's really helpful for people who are leaving the district, or maybe leaving a classroom that they want the campus, that team to continue to be able to use. Okay. Questions so far on the 6 tips for Google Classroom? You're good? Okay. Thanks. All right. We're going to move on. All right. So one thing to consider is being sort of creative in your organizational skills. So we use the Windows period to bring up emojis and add that to names of classes and names of files even. And then thinking about Google Classroom organization for you and your students, they can unenroll in classrooms if they no longer want to be a part of that. How might that help you as well as your students? So, for example, this is Matt Fry. This is I know this, he's the owner because his lovely picture is on this class card. So I'm the owner of this one because I don't have a picture of myself. So this is Matt's class that I am a student in. And if I don't want to be in that class anymore, I can myself unenroll. So students can unenroll in classes that they no longer want to be a part of. They will still have their work in their Google Drive. They just won't see their class, their old classroom on their dashboard. So do you find that as a benefit to your students as well as yourself in the way of Google Classroom? So you can answer Google Drive. So again, don't judge my Google Drive, sorry. But we're going to show you a couple of quick tips and tricks about how to clean that up. So we're going to look at Classwork folders. We're going to look at the shared with me, and we're going to look at leaving the district. All right, so ready, set. Oh, and again, if you'll notice this little video right here is a 5-minute video that you can kind of catch the synopsis of these processes. So Google Classwork folders are all located in your drive. So I'm going to hit Control T. That's going to give me a new tab. And I'm going to look for Classroom in my Google Drive. So here in my drive is my Google Classroom. And I think it only says Classroom. It doesn't say Google Classroom. So your Classroom master folder has all the subfolders of all your classes. So here it is. And I actually color coded mine so that I could find it easily. And then I added a little emoji. The reason I added this little stop emoji is because you never, ever, ever want to delete this classroom folder. If you delete it, then all the subfolders you will not be able to access. So don't delete the classroom folder. That's the master folder. If you need to give yourself some sort of reminder, that might be helpful. Okay, so if I go into my classroom, these are all of the folders of the classes that I am a part of. Alternatively, if I wanted to go into the classroom folder of the class of the class in question, I can go into my classwork, and next to that Google Calendar is the Google Drive folder. So I can just access it directly that way. Okay. And then there's my master classroom. So the more Google Classrooms you have or are a co-teacher of, the more folders you will have in your classroom master folder. So I might have several that are just scrolling. Okay. Now, you want to kind of clean this up and streamline it so you see the folders that you use most. And at the end of the year, you want to move the old folders into another subfolder so that you don't have to sift through all of these classroom folders. And so I have a class folder called, let's see if I can bring this up, Z co-teacher folders. So I made a folder inside Classroom that are all the folders for which I'm a co-teacher of, but I don't really interact with them. I'm just sort of the safeguard. So I named it co-teacher, and I put a Z in front of it so that it bubbles to the very bottom of my classroom list. And that way, it's kind of out of the way. The last session, I also added this old guy right here to say, these are old folders, so I don't really need them anyway. So the way I can do this is, so I've created that folder, and I am a co-teacher in Martinez Spanish 7. I'm going to click it and drag it into this Z co-teacher folder. Okay, it's not going to change the owner's view of the owner's Google Drive. It's just going to change the way I access it. Alternatively, if you notice right here, let's see if I can, right here on my Google Drive to the left, have you ever noticed this little arrow? You can click the arrow down and it will list all of your folders on the left side, just like your Explorer files. And so if I have, here's my classroom folder, and here's my, all the way down is my Z co-teacher folder, right? So if I wanted to, I can drag it this way as well. So if I have a lot and I don't want to have to scroll, so this kindergarten classroom I'm a co-teacher in, I'm just going to drag it into Z co-teachers. And then here's one that I'm a, oh, Etsy, I'm going to put that actually in my 1920. So I can take, oh, here's a computer science that I'm a co-teacher in that. I'm just dragging it and dropping. So Google's very handy about the drag and drop. I can either drag it within my drive or I can drag it over to the list of folders to the left. And so I have a co-teacher, but look at this. I also have a archive drive. So I named it archive. I put the Z in front of it, so drop it down to the end. And then I added the year. So every year I create a new subfolder and drop everything from that year into that folder. Okay, so then I'm going to take a hot minute and drag the ones that I don't need. So here's my Etsy 2019 Google Classroom that I don't need. I'm going to put it in my 2019 folder. Okay, so I'm just dragging and dropping, and that's going to be really handy to sort of migrate your folders that you don't use anymore. Okay, and then if you'll notice, when I name my Google Classroom and I start with an emoji, it bubbles it up to the very top. So normally my Mrs. Jensby's second grade is down here under M. But if I name that classroom Apple emoji, Mrs. Jensby, then it'll pop to the top and that'll make it easy for me to access next year. So classwork folders, one thing that's important is to not delete the classroom folder. Number 2, quick tip is to name it with a number convention, a year, and or a name like used or Z archive or something where it pops it down lower in your alpha order list of folders in your classroom folder. Okay, and then let's talk about shared with me for a second. So you have a shared with me drive right here. Whoops, section right here, shared with me. And these are all the items that are shared with you. This will include those assignments that are from the Google Classroom. And so when you go through, if you don't care about cleaning this up, that is fine. There's plenty of people that don't have any problem just using their Google search. But if it bothers you and you want to clean it up, you can go through and delete, highlight and just click delete and it'll delete those files. If you are not the owner of these files, then it will go away in your view, but it will stay in the owner's. It doesn't change the owner's view of these files in their Google Drive. It's just removing yourself from having access. If I highlight one and I want to see what it is, it's so small, or if I have this list view, sometimes people like to have this list view and I go, what in the world is that? I can hit P and that's going to give me a preview. Or I can hit N and that's going to let me rename it. Maybe I need to name it better so I know what it is. Okay. Let me make it bigger. Okay. So if I say, oh my goodness, Title I branding, education movement, I really need that document. I can highlight it and touch S. So you try. If you're in your Google Drive, highlight one of the files. If I hit S, this little star comes up and it's added to my starred folder. So some people use starred documents a lot. And then if I hit S again, it removes it. So if you want to star some of your documents so you can find it in your starred folder, you can do that from here. That works in your Google Drive as well. All right, so you can delete to clean up your shared with me. You can start deleting files and folders from the shared with me. If you return the student work back to the student, then you don't have to worry about permanently deleting files. They are owned by the student and they will still have it. It just removes it from your view. Remember that you can put a P there to preview. An S adds a star to that folder or file. And then don't forget to use your little drop down on the left of your Google Drive to make dragging and dropping easy. All right, so shared with me, you're not really able to organize shared with me. It's kind of like your email or like a Facebook feed. It just scrolls. And if you're leaving the district, if you are going to another district, or you're moving, or you're resigning, or you're retiring, there's a couple of ways that you can take your documents with you. So I've listed the three, and I'm just going to talk about it, but also know that it's right here in this end of year EOY Tech Tips. So right here where it says leaving the district, you have Google Classroom and Google Drive. So 3 ways that you can take your files with you. One, you can bring let's say, one, you can download all of your Google Drive files to your personal computer. So when you're at home and you access your pisd.edu credentials and you access your Google Drive, you can download it all to your desktop at home and then upload it to your Google Drive, personal Google Drive with your Gmail account or personal account. That's one. Be sure to go into the shared with me and download files that you need from there as well. Those will not automatically be downloaded. 2, you can take a flash drive or an external drive, plug it in, save your files to the drives, to the flash drive or external drive, and then take that home and then upload it into your personal account. Make sure that if you have a flash drive that it's sufficient, because remember, when you have a education Google account, it's pretty large and you're going to be able to, and I'll show you how to find out how much you have storage. And then 3, you can use the free Google Takeout service, which will in one step pull all of your files from your PISD Google Drive into a destination account like your Gmail account. For this step, it will pull all of the files that you are the owner of. So if you want to add files and folders that you are not the owner of, you can make a copy of it first or download it and upload it separately. One thing that Leah reminded me of earlier is that when you do the Google Takeout, again, remembering that our education drive, pisd.edu Google Drive, is a lot more storage than your personal Gmail account. So just be aware and cognizant of that and make sure that you have enough storage, or that your storage has been pared down to enable you to transfer. Okay, and there's a link right there for more information. And by the way, if you're not sure, gosh, how much storage do I have on my Google Drive? If you are in Google Drive, down at the very bottom, you have a storage tab. And so you can click, I have 44 gigabytes used. And so here, if I click on storage, it's going to show me how much I have. And then you can also sort your storage files from your biggest file to your smallest. And most of my big files are videos. So I'm going to have to take care of that, which I can do that by offloading it to YouTube or saving it onto a drive. Okay, yeah. So you got this. So now you have tools and tips to feel empowered to kind of get all nerdy and get your files under control and sift. And just like in your personal classroom, how you have a bunch that you're gonna toss and a bunch that you're gonna pass on to other people, and maybe a bunch that you're gonna save. You're gonna kind of go through that same process.